Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Anyreach Roundtable, where we explore how AI is transforming the way we work. I'm your host, Richard Lin, CEO of Anyreach, and today's guest is Trent of Product Marketer Pro, and his business helps companies and startups find product market fit. Trent, it's great to have you here.
Nice to see you, Richard. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for jumping on. Just for our audience, do you mind sharing a little bit about your background experience and kind of how you got to where you are today, just so we can know you better?
Yeah, so I've been involved in startups for going on 20 years now. I literally dropped out of college at 19 to join two of the former founders of MySpace at a startup. Um, and I haven't stopped since. So that was nearly 20 years ago. I've worked on everything from I was, I worked at Playboy doing internet marketing and web development for them early in my career. Worked at a medical research company. I bootstrapped my own startup to $1 million in revenue and sold it for an exit. I worked on a SaaS automation platform for several years in the cloud space. I been a consultant for companies like F5 on their senior product marketing team. I was the director of product marketing for the Graph, which is like a unicorn cryptocurrency. And I've worked on several AI projects in companies now, quantum cybersecurity, encryption companies, all kinds of interesting stuff. So I have helped launch and work on go-to-market strategies for dozens of companies at this point.
Got it, got it. Well, that's a pretty amazing journey, and I'm sure the audience wants to know Playboy and digital marketing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I was what, 21, 22 at that time. This was way back when the market was crashing in 2008. I was looking for an opportunity. I was hoping Playboy might be recession proof. Unfortunately, it was not. I actually did get laid off from that position with a bunch of other people. They shut down the studio I worked in, but frankly, that was the easiest marketing I've ever done in my entire career. I would just, I would post a video or something on YouTube from like some of our like behind the scenes footage of like some of our shoots and stuff like that, and it would just be like, oh, well, here's 100,000 views, without really trying, right?
Yeah.
So it helps when you have a brand like Playboy to be able to amplify content. But that was a different time back then, and I was helping building out a lot of their web properties, and I was running. Back then, social media was MySpace actually, so
Hmm.
I was actually running some of their MySpace accounts and working on stuff like that and their YouTube channels. So. Um, Definitely, like I said, one of the easier things to market in my career.
Right, right. There's no education, and there's already a pretty loyal customer base, right?
Yeah, and like I said, brand loyalty like you wouldn't believe. So,
Right. Awesome. Well, obviously, AI is kind of transforming a lot of different industries, especially around kind of marketing. As a CEO of Product Marketer Pro, how have you kind of been inspired by some of the new AI trends, technologies, and how is that going into, your day-to-day operations?
yeah, I don't know if inspired's the right word. I definitely had an existential crisis around it. Ultimately, there was a moment there where I wasn't sure I was going to have a job anymore.
Mm,
Um, then I really started getting to know the different AI systems and playing around with it more intimately. And frankly, I knew this was coming. I just didn't know when, because I had friends who worked at like big tech companies, and like they had told me what they were working on, and they probably
mm,
broke some NDAs doing so. But I knew that we were going to get here eventually, right?
right.
So, but it was pretty shocking when ChatGPT first dropped to the public like
Mm,
that. Um, but ultimately, I've come to realize how both amazing and also not amazing AI is.
mm,
So I've seen some interesting things. So, for example, AI is horrible at positioning work. So, as a product
mm,
marketer, like positioning is everything, right? Making sure you have the right product market fit, that you're talking to the right audience, you're having the right
mm,
conversations with the right customers, using that feedback, implementing that back into your product strategy and your roadmap. AI cannot do that well. Um,
mm,
it still requires a human in the loop to be able to properly do that process. And it'll evolve and things will definitely change over time. But the problem is the AI lies, and it appeases. It's designed to appease the user right now. It's not designed to tell the objective truth. So I've been in several situations now where I've talked to founders where they'll do something and I'm like, where did you come up with this? And they're like, well, ChatGPT told me it was a great idea and I should be able to build a startup and get a $50 million market cap in like a week and like X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, stop trusting people you meet on the internet. That includes ChatGPT. This was a lesson I was taught as a kid, back in the 90s. But I think we need to apply it to AI right now because AI, frankly, it's not honest. And that's something we're going to have to figure out because, like I said, it's definitely created situations where founders are getting the wrong information from AI because the AI is trying to make them happy and the AI is trying to make that user like them versus telling them the objective truth or having a real conversation like a human would, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities for AI to improve systems and like my own workflows. I've been able to like 3x, and within a year, I'll probably be able to 4x my workflows, and I'll probably be able to do even more with AI. But you have to babysit it. It is not something you can just set and forget right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point where, the models are pretty biased, as you mentioned, to be more passive and kind to the user without telling them the truth. A little funny idea, maybe they need to have like a new ChatGPT called tigermom.ai, where it's always extremely mean, but it tells you the truth, right? But you kind of in your career and kind of what you mentioned, working with large enterprises down to startups, what do you think is maybe the trend between these two segments, and what are people maybe getting wrong? Because you mentioned, founders would just like throw some positioning strategy into ChatGPT and just expect that's the right answer. Are you seeing anything different on the enterprise side in terms of their education, their adoption, how they're using the tool, how they're thinking about AI and so forth?
Yeah, so on the enterprise side, there's definitely a lot more hesitation, especially with using, ChatGPT and using the big LLMs. They don't want to. They don't want information being fed into someone else's black box, right? So there's security issues, there's intellectual property issues, so on the enterprise side, it's really, okay, how do we build this technology or deploy these things in-house on our servers and secure them, which hinders some of the innovation that's happening with, using a product like ChatGPT because you can't necessarily get the latest model, right? You have to run, like an open source model internally on your own server. You've got to set your own restrictions. So in some of my enterprise contracts, like I've had to use their internal LLMs, which they were good enough. Don't get me wrong, but it's definitely not the same as like having access to Grok 3, where it's basically like a research team that can go deploy agents and like scrape 150 websites for me in 2 minutes and give me results, right?
Right.
So it's just an LLM sitting on a server somewhere hosted by that company so that the information doesn't leak out and go into another enterprise company like OpenAI and, or someone else, right?
Yeah.
So that is the challenge on the enterprise side, is how do we secure AI, and how do we just prevent giving all of our secrets to, OpenAI,
Right.
which is a very serious concern. And I don't disagree with enterprises' hesitation to just saying everyone go use ChatGPT and give all your secrets to Sam Altman, right? So probably not the person you want to give your secrets to.
Yeah, you actually bring up a really interesting kind of talking point there. I actually experienced this myself. So my girlfriend works at a pretty large gaming company, and they have GPT installed, for their employees. And I was like, hey, you have this problem you want to solve. Why don't you just throw this into O3? And she's like, what's O? Right? Because they're still on 4, right? So, as to your point, a lot of these enterprises have these kind of restrictions, and it makes sense to have those. You don't want your data leaked and so forth, but they are behind in versions, right? And their employees don't necessarily get the latest models to do their job and be more productive. So it's a really interesting take. Just getting a little bit more specific, you mentioned that, AI kind of gave you this come to Jesus moment, if you will, of like, oh, am I going to still have a job? Then something dramatically changed where you're like, actually, I could use AI to 4x my productivity. Can you maybe share a specific example of a project or something you've worked on where that switch happened?
Yeah.
Where you're like, okay, AI, I can use this, I can benefit from it.
So, as a product marketer, I lean heavily on frameworks,
Mm,
especially for best practices. And as a consultant, I work on a lot of different projects. So,
mm,
I have to lean on best practices, right? And ultimately, that's the starting place before launching anything. Is you have to check all the boxes of best practices. Of, okay, let's make sure we have this for the launch. We've got this for the launch, right?
mm,
When it comes to go-to-market strategy, ultimately, it's kind of a glorified checklist. So,
mm,
so the checklist is kind of the same no matter what the product is.
mm,
Now, where the nuance is in the positioning, the messaging, making sure that the brand, the values, those things are aligned with the company and the product and service that you're working on, right?
mm,
So I've been able to leverage my frameworks within AI. So I've been able to take frameworks that used to take me manually as a marketer weeks to months.
mm,
I can now do them in about an hour or two.
mm,
And I'm able to do that step by step process with AI now.
mm,
It's, I still, it, I've gotten to a place where it gets me about 90% of the way there, and I still have to finish the
mm.
last 10%.
Yep.
Um, but as I've gotten my prompts more and more where they need to be, I'm
Mm,
like, I'm close to probably even 95% output at this point.
mm,
Um, but again, it also depends on what's happening with these models because I was sometimes getting better results a year ago than I'm getting with like the most
right.
modern versions of ChatGPT today. I'm having to have more longer conversations and go back and forth with it now because they put more guardrails in place. So,
Mm,
like lately, I've been using Grok 3 more than anything else because
mm,
there's less guardrails.
yep.
So I'm able to prompt it, get the output I'm looking for, and not have that back and forth that I'm having with ChatGPT now. So, so those are some of the other things that have kind of worked into that too. Is it's like I'm constantly changing tools as the tools are evolving. It's like as a new tool comes out, it's like okay, this one's a little bit better for this. This one's a little
Right.
bit better for that. It's like, and then sometimes I'll also use three or up to three different models sometimes. So
Mm,
maybe I'll do some research on Grok. I'll maybe do some like initial like ideation and like content creation with ChatGPT, and then I'll go throw it into Claude and copy edit, and then maybe I'll use Grammarly on top of that to like make sure the grammar is
mm,
correct. So it's like I've touched like four different AI models to create like one document or one piece of content, right?
right.
Um, so that's the other thing. So sometimes I'm leveraging different models based on their strengths and weaknesses to do
Mm,
different things. But I realized, this is better than hiring a team in some cases, right? Like
right.
I can just go prompt AI to get what I want, get a, 90% of the way there, spend, 20, 30 minutes or an hour of my time to get to 100% and get it to where it needs to be. And I've now saved weeks and I've saved having to go hire and train someone, which could take six
Right.
months, right? So that's where AI has really come in. Is can it get me, fill out the initial part of my framework and get me at least part of the way there, so that I can get in and finish. And like I said, sometimes that's turning weeks or months of work into hours.
Yeah, yeah, and you bring up a really interesting thing, and I'm hearing this a lot from all the different interviews, is because there's so many different kind of foundational models or these LLMs from Grok to Claude to ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and so forth, that folks will actually run multiple like models concurrently, right? I actually do that myself. I have like this big ultra wide monitor, and I have like four models open in their chat windows, and just due to the capabilities of each model, like for instance, Claude is great at creating mermaid flowcharts, whereas ChatGPT is better at that research portion, even Grok to some extent. And I think Grok's actually better on visual. But then you add in the reasoning models where you have to wait for a response. All of a sudden, I'm queuing up like multiple things in parallel and then coming back to my tabs and saying, did this job finish? Did this job finish? Right. So a lot of multitasking, and I think that's kind of the new trend. Like, are you able to, think about all these different threads in parallel and multitask to get the most outcome from AI? So pretty cool that we're kind of aligned in terms of that mindset. And so, as you kind of think about these different tools, you mentioned, your general kind of foundational models and so forth. Are you seeing any other sort of like AI tools or technologies that's kind of changing the game for you in terms of your business, for other kind of specific use cases?
Yeah, so I've been playing with Lovable lately, as
Mm,
well as N8N, and both are amazing in their own regards.
mm,
Now, they both have challenges. So, like when I first started using Lovable, like it would just build stuff, and I had no idea
yeah.
how it worked. So what I've realized is I don't like that. So what I'm actually doing now is I'm building my front end in Lovable, and I'm
Mm,
building my back end in N8N or something
mm,
else, so that I have control over my back end, so that I can specify exactly like, okay, access this API at this time, and
mm,
this model, not that model, or use this scraping agent, not that scraping agent. With Lovable, that was just getting way too intense. So what I did is just integrated the two. And I was able to just prompt that. I could just in plain
mm,
be like, okay, now integrate with my N8N, and provide a user interface for this workflow, right?
mm,
So I found that to work very successfully. Um, Actually, like shockingly successfully. Like
mm.
this is product development work that used to take months.
Right.
Now I can do in like 30 minutes of prompting.
Yeah.
And literally, I'm doing it from my phone sometimes. Like I'll be up at night and can't sleep or something, and I'm like talking to Lovable like I'm talking to an engineer, and
Yeah.
like concepting out an idea, right? And then I'll get up in the morning and then like plug the right backend into it, right?
Mm,
So that's been really fascinating. Um, I don't there's security issues you have to work through, and like
mm,
how it works with the database, and like you really have to know product, and you really have to
yeah.
like understand like what you're doing. Like my mom's probably not going to figure out level, right? Whereas like she gets a lot of value out of ChatGPT and Grok and those
Mm,
kind of things, right? But like Lovable is still very much a developer tool, right?
yep.
And then for N8N, I mean, I love the fact that it's open source. You can deploy it locally. You can deploy it on your own servers.
Mm,
Um, it's like almost like the WordPress of AI workflow automations, right? Where
right.
you're in control. So I really love that, and what you're able to do there, and visually dragging and dropping all this stuff is just like so cool to be able to build workflow automations like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's still got a ways to go though, but it's there's a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we're hearing a lot is kind of the blend of different roles. I mean, especially kind of in product engineering, design, and so forth. Obviously your background in marketing, now you're kind of getting to like product and engineering. How do you kind of see, the marketer's role evolving now with AI, considering that all these tools make it so accessible to actually do a lot more that's kind of out of their wheelhouse?
So product marketing is going to become more important and more critical than ever, I think.
Mm,
Um, I just saw like a LinkedIn post where someone's like, product marketing is going to be replaced by AI, and I was like, good luck,
mm,
because like I said, the AI can't do positioning properly.
mm,
I have tried everything. I have, been prompt engineering this now for several years. It's still about a 15-step process that takes an hour,
mm,
to get the AI to do what it needs to do properly. So like, even if you had super intelligence and a really sophisticated model, even if you trained a model to do this specifically,
mm,
it's still just not going to connect all the dots the way a human can, because
mm,
there's something innately human. We have an intuition. We have the ability to understand vision. We have the ability to understand nuance and context in a way that the AI just never will.
mm,
So product marketing is going to become more and more important, but the role is going to evolve and change into more of an orchestrator. So,
mm,
the product marketer is going to be orchestrating AI just like they would orchestrate or manage, the product team, or work with the sales team and work with the marketing teams. Because for those that don't know, product marketing sits in the middle of product, sales, and marketing, and even sometimes
mm,
customer success and support. So, so I think people within that role are going to be more important than ever, but their role is
mm,
going to be orchestrating both humans and AI. Because a
mm,
lot of product marketing, as it is right now, is coordinating between these teams. Like, I've never met a team that I came into without if they didn't have a product marketer before, like the sales team and the engineers don't talk, right? Like
Right.
that's extremely rare. So like the product marketer is usually the person in the middle who has to translate between both teams, right?
Mm,
So that translation is never going to go away from a human
mm,
aspect, right? There's always going to need to be that human that speaks sales and speaks engineering and speaks
right.
product and marketing and who can sit there and coordinate that. But now that person's also going to have to speak prompt engineering and they're also going to have to speak AI automation and they're going to
Mm,
have to know how to orchestrate these tools. So the product marketing role and the marketing role within these organizations needs to evolve to include wrangling not just humans but also AI and getting the AI and the humans on the same page.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because we're really starting to see, the kind of the hot topic right now is like, oh, the doom and gloom of AI replacing jobs. But we've really seen, roles where, as you mentioned, like orchestrating, managing different stakeholders, like product managers, product marketing, and so forth, are actually going to be pretty protected. At least the good ones that wield AI, right? Because those are the skill sets you need to bridge the gap between the human and the AI kind of tooling. We're also seeing that kind of like in the roles where you need that human relationship, like account executive, sales, customer success. If you're working with enterprise, like you can throw as much AI, but at the end of the day, they still want to get a human face on the phone every week just to chat.
Yep.
So yeah, it's pretty interesting, kind of seeing how different roles are evolving. Some are actually probably going to be replaced, but other ones are actually going to grow quite a bit more. So just kind of switching topics, as you think about, product marketing, maybe even digital marketing, what are some interesting maybe case studies that you've seen? Not doesn't have to necessarily be your business in particular, where AI was used for that specific, marketing campaign that was like, well, this is freaking amazing. And then on the flip side, anything that you saw that was like a complete dud, like failure. They applied AI and it sucked. You know.
Um, I've seen more failures than successes. I mean, it's I have to point to like what's happening with like VO3 and what's happening on the video side. I think there's
Mm,
some interesting things happening there. I mean, I've been watching the Stormtrooper and like the memes that are coming out of that and
yeah.
the Yetis and the Bigfoot videos that have been dropping everywhere. Um, I've seen some creative use of those to create ads, and I think that's where we're heading in the future. I've seen a
Mm,
couple ads created with AI that are just they're out there, they're weird, they're zany, they're funny.
mm,
It's enabling a level of creativity that we haven't seen for a while.
yeah.
For the last like 15, 20 years, we've kind of been in a cultural drought in the United
Mm,
States, and like every year the Super Bowl commercials get more and more boring, and like we just haven't had good creative advertising anymore, right?
mm,
So I think AI is actually going to enable a very weird moment for advertising, where we're going to be able to do some things that we just couldn't do before because the production cost of these things used to be insane, right?
mm,
Creating a video of two stormtroopers, talking about Lay's potato chips or whatever. That would like to go get the licensing, the copyright,
right, right.
whatever with Disney, and trying to actually film this and have a level of production quality. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars here, right?
Right, right.
That is now a prompt and hitting return on your keyboard and waiting like 20 minutes.
Yeah,
So we're going to see some interesting stuff with advertising, I think. In the short term, though, I've seen a lot of bad copy, a lot of bad positioning. I've
mm,
seen a lot of founders be lied to by AI that are convincing them that they have the best ideas ever. Um, and I've worked on a few different projects that are like marketing AI, automation tools and that kind of stuff. And
mm,
I've talked to those founders, and like they're all finding that the AI just cannot do the positioning work.
right,
So,
right.
um, so ultimately, I think there's going to be there's going to be both a creative influx because now anybody can do this, but on
Mm,
the other hand, there's also going to be some really weird stuff because of it.
right.
So at the end of the day, it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. You're able to do a lot more with a lot less. And
Yeah.
that is going to empower a certain percentage of people to be able to do some really incredible things. but it's also going to empower some other people to do some really weird things.
Yeah. Talking about the weird topic around creatives, I don't know if you remember the first version of Midjourney. There's this whole meme going around with Will Smith eating spaghetti. But the first version had like fingers coming out of his face, and it was just like hallucinating, what Will Smith looks like. And then now they're like, what, version 8, where Will Smith is actually eating spaghetti, which is pretty funny. On another note, I remember seeing, remember the whole viral trend of like 100 men versus one gorilla, like who would win? And I remember seeing a video, I think it was with Google's new kind of video model, where it's like a gorilla was on a podcast talking about how he would fight, 100 men. And I was like, oh, that's super creative, super funny, right? So yeah, to your point, I think we're going to see influx of, really interesting creatives coming out and essentially makes anybody that has a really funny or interesting idea to, build campaigns kind of on the fly. So. And so as you kind of think about the emerging trend of, agentic AI, AI trends, tools, and so on and so forth, how do you see that impacting, the marketing landscape or more specifically product marketing in the
So
next 3 to 5 years? Yep.
yeah, so I mean, it's gonna. Well, the good news is everyone, on one hand, I have the challenge of getting a lot of budgets cut lately. So, it's gonna allow me to do more with less,
Mm,
because that's always been a hindrance, right? Whenever I'm working with a company or we're constrained on budget, that's always the reason why we can't do that really good creative or that really
mm,
interesting video or something, right? Um, on the other hand, there's also this like paradoxical thing too, where like like just doing like the Loom style videos with a founder on your homepage, like I
mm,
recommend that to like most of the companies I work with because
mm,
it's so authentic, right? It's like the anti AI, right? So there's a value in that too, right? Because like you don't want everything to feel perfect. You want some stuff to be raw and uncensored. Um, and you just can't match you just can't match the passion a founder has for their own company. Like
mm,
there's just a glow they have when they're talking about the product they've spent the last 2 years building, right?
mm,
And you're just never going to replace that with AI. So with that said, I think with all these AI tools, it's going to be a big shift for product marketers as they have to learn and adopt all these new tools. But I think it's going to allow a single product marketer to do what 3 or 4 did in the past, and
mm.
it's going to enable one person who really knows what they're doing to be able to essentially 4 or 5x their workflows in the next 3 to 5 years.
Right,
And
right.
as more specific tools come out for specific things, you'll be able
Mm,
to leverage those specific tools to be able to get really good results.
mm,
So I think there's going to be this kind of explosion of all these different things, and then there's going to be this consolidation phase
mm.
where all of these then start to get consolidated into the larger models and can get consolidated into some of the bigger companies and projects. And then you'll have more clearly defined winners in the space, right? Uh,
Mm,
so that's typically how this goes with any technology, right? You kind of have an explosion of, thousands of different startups, and then everything kind of consolidates into like 3 or 5, major companies or products or solutions that really just, generally solve the most problems for the most people, right?
mm,
So I
mm.
think with AI, in 3 to 5 years, we'll see that as well. We'll of course see advancements in the capabilities as well. Um, but we also on the other side, we also have to have like that human moment where it's like, okay, we need that catch up time for people to actually learn how to use these tools, right?
Right, right.
One of the other interesting things that I'm seeing is the self-serve model for products and services doesn't
Mm,
really work anymore. So
mm.
no one has time or the energy or the bandwidth to sit down and learn another HubSpot or learn
Right.
another like Google Analytics or learn another really complex product and self-serve. I feel like those types of products are kind of dinosaurs now,
Yeah.
and they're going to get replaced with done for you AI first solutions. Um, so, I am seeing this pivot towards done for you services with AI.
Mm,
And I think we're going to be moving more and more towards that. So, product marketers and marketers in general are going to be selling done for you services
mm.
instead of use this self serve product to do
Right.
this yourself. It's, hey, use this AI and it's going to do it for you. right?
Right. Right.
So that's going to change the messaging, the positioning, the tone, the sales cycles. It's going to change everything about the business models. But
Right.
strangely, the fundamentals still stay the same.
Mm.
You still have to position for the right person, the right audience, the right timing. You have to have the right messaging. You have to have the right creatives. You have to have the right sales cycle. Like all of that still requires alignment, and it's still a very human thing that you have to do to be able to pull these things together.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're definitely seeing on our side as well. We actually have two done for you services. One is like AI development, and one is like AI go to market. And it's interesting because I think businesses are starting to realize that, hey, if you're going to do AI, I don't want to, log into another tool, onboard, and try to figure out all the nitty gritty of how to use your product.
Yeah.
Can you just give me the outcome I want? I have this KPI, it's not doing great. Just make it go up. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff and how the sausage is made, but you go handle that. Just give me the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And really, I think AI, as you mentioned, products are really going to become like more service offerings. And read this really interesting article by Sequoia saying that the next evolution of AI isn't really here to replace the cloud SaaS market, which is a pretty small kind of TAM, if you will, compared to the professional services market, which is like 10 to 20 trillion dollars, right? And AI or agentic is really going to impact that area. So really interesting points. And Trent, appreciate you being on for Roundtable. I'm sure our audience is really going to appreciate kind of your insights and perspectives on product marketing. If folks want to learn more about you, what you're doing at your company, where can they find you?
You can find me at productmarketerpro.com. I'm also Trent Lipinski all over every social media platform, LinkedIn, X, you name it. So I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And for the audience, if you guys want to know links to Trent and the rest of different ways to connect with him, we'll also include that in our blog post as well. All right. Thanks, Trent.